Welcome to the Monsters, Madness, and Magic podcast. I am Justin, joined by my co-host making his M3 debut, the Howling Man himself, Mr. Jarvis Leatherby of Night Demon and Cirith Ungol. Jarvis, say hello.
Hello, hello.
Thank you, Jarvis. And this evening we are joined by a very special guest, visual effects artist, director, the doctor of Deathgasm, Mr. Jason Lee Howden. Jason, how the hell are you?
Awesome, great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh yeah, man, it's a pleasure. So let's just start at the beginning and keep it easy. What's your horror movie origin story? What were you devouring at a young age?
I wasn't actually allowed to watch horror movies. I had very strict parents that were like, no horror. I was allowed to watch like really violent ninja movies because my dad wanted me to get into like sports. So he'd let me watch like these R18 like ninja movies of people getting like shook in the eyes and stuff. But I wasn't allowed to watch actual horror movies. But I think the movie that kicked it off was like when I was a kid. I was, I must have been like maybe 10 or something. After school, I went to this department store. And you know how they used to have like the big walls of TVs? I was just like looking at video games or something, and I saw this wall of TVs, and it had Peter Jackson's Bad Taste playing on it. Like all the TVs. It's like 3:00 in the afternoon. It's like, what the fuck? And like, I was just watching it, and just my mind couldn't comprehend what was going on. There was just like sheep getting blown up and like brains getting eaten. I just sat there and watched like to the end. I was like, what the fuck is this? And I think the thing that really struck me is like the fact they had New Zealand accents. I just didn't know that New Zealanders were allowed to make movies like that. I was like, this is insane. So, I think that sort of like planted the seed, I guess.
Did you see Dead Alive back in the day?
I did. Like from then on, I was hooked. So that was definitely one of my favorites. I actually had my room when I was in my later teens was just like every inch of like the walls and the ceiling were covered in film posters. I just used to go to video shops after school, and I just like get all the film posters from video shops. And like, yeah, so the one when I lay down on my bed, like the one above me was like Brain Dead. That was my favorite.
That's a great cover.
Amazing. And it's kind of crazy because I'm living in Wellington, so I'm actually like really close to a lot of the places where they filmed that. It's Peter Jackson's like stomping ground. So he actually filmed Bad Taste like maybe like 10 minutes away from where I live, where I am right now. And another big influence, and I guess you guys can probably tell, from watching Deathgasm is Evil Dead 2, which I watched in high school, and yeah, that was another one of those moments where I just it's sort of just like changed the way I thought about films, because I'd seen a few slashers, I'd seen the Free movies, but I hadn't seen anything quite so fucked up and off the wall and experimental, and it's just
gory.
It's so gory, and all the different camera angles and like crazy shit. So like that really had an effect on me as well. And I think there's a lot of in Deathgasm that's aping that, that style and that sense of humor.
Right.
Yeah, I actually saw the Evil Dead musical in Vegas. It was great, man.
Oh, fantastic.
It was like a guar show. Like if you were up front, like they gave you a white T-shirt because that was like the splatter zone. It was crazy though.
Man, amazing.
Yeah, they did a full-on musical, but definitely Deathgasm. Like I could see, it's funny. I think because Evil Dead is just kind of so old now. It's like it wasn't until you just mentioned that I can really.
It's clear as day
from
now.
It. It's like, wow, it's like, yeah, there's really a good, I can see where that influence of it seeps into it, which is nice,
Yeah. Like for me, it was like, movies like that, like, Bad Taste, Evil Dead, Dawn of the Dead, they were Redneck Zombies. They were the movies that me and my mates would watch all the time, in my teens. And like, so Deathgasm was like taking those influences, and also the other thing I was incredibly influenced was like heavy metal. Like I was a massive metalhead. I sort of got into metal in a strange way. Like I was sort of you know, I wasn't really into music until for a long time. When I was a kid, I just listened to like 50s bands. Like my mum would always play like a lot of like 1950s rock and roll. So, and I didn't get into like other kids at school into like, it's showing my age a bit, you know, like New Kids on the Block and all that shit. And I just couldn't, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, so I was never really into popular music. And then when I was about 13 at school, I think another kid had like Cannibal Corpse. I think it was Tomb of the Mutilated. And it was, I think it was 92. Was it 92? Like Tomb of the Mutilated and like Body Count. And we were just like laughing at how offensive it was and reading the lyrics. And you just at that age where like, you know, it's just so just insane and taboo that you just can't help but love it. So I sort of joined metal and like, from like, you know, Cannibal Corpse when they're at their most offensive. And then I started like reverse engineer my way back through like, you know, Priest and Maiden and Sabbath and yeah, so which is kind of a weird way to do it. Usually, I guess maybe it's usually the other way around. But
yeah,
so Deathgasm was like, you know, those like the metal, all the music I was into when I was that age, and the movies I was into at that age, and like sort of joining them up and you know, seeing what we could do with it, you know, and like where it could go.
I'm going to take a guess and say that Deathgasm is pretty autobiographical. Were you in any bands? How much of you and your friends are in this movie?
A lot. Like I named a few of them after like my mates even, and it's yeah. I mean, a similar thing happened to me where I got expelled from one school and I had to go stay with my dad and stepmother when I was like 14 or 15. And it was a much smaller town. I was like one of the only metalheads at school, if not the only metalheads. So
yeah, I lived through that too. Yeah,
yeah.
In the 90s, we're about the same age. So yeah, like in the 90s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like same deal.
And it's not like it is today. It's a lot more socially acceptable today. Like back then, it was like, you know, if you wore like, you know, the metal shirts, like I used to wear like a Deicide shirt around and like long hair and, you know, all the rest. And you know, you stood out back then. You know, it's definitely not like today where it's, you know, and even stuff like, you know, playing Dungeons and Dragons, like in the movie, like that was very weird back then. Like nerd culture was very weird. You know, like if you played video games, you were a nerd.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear that you know, pre-internet, we have the same experience in the West Coast of the United States and in New Zealand. You know, I mean, it's really interesting. Like, that's really cool to know. That's really cool to know that, you know, because I mean, you know, in the same, I mean, I was born in 81. What year were you born?
79.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, So it's like, you know, you're in that it's like pre-Columbine era, but like if Columbine happened when we were in high school, like easily somebody probably could have said, "Oh yeah, it was probably that guy in the Deicide shirt." Like, what are you talking about? You know, like exactly. Just total social outcast. You know, that's it's really really interesting. I always kind of felt that, like, I don't feel that way now, but back then I always kind of felt like I was born like 10 years too late. You know, like I always felt that way, but especially even with cinema and movies and just popular music and stuff like that. So it's cool to see, like, you know, much in the way, like, my parents wouldn't let me watch horror movies either when I was younger, and it became my favorite thing. You know, that's kind of what happens, right? If you're a little bit sheltered from it, you know, there's this big explosion later when you like, oh man, like you soak up almost at once all the stuff that you missed out on. And when you're at your creative peak, you know, you're able to put something great together like that. So that's what's cool. I think that even with your film, I think the timing was right.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting that you say that. Like, you know, I sort of wonder, because, you know, I've just got like a kid of my own and he's like almost 2. And I'm like, you know, am I gonna, like, when do I start getting him into horror? You know, like when obviously, like, you know, he's gonna like cotton on. He's already seen like a lot of my sort of horror posters and stuff, and you know, yeah, like, do I have to like say, oh no, you have to wait till you're like 16 to watch this, or do I just like let him watch like Human Centipede now and just see he might like turn against it and like become like a doctor or like a lawyer? Yeah, just get, you know, play some anal cunt to him now and just see what happens.
Always remember this though, like what your parents think is cool is not cool.
Exactly. So he'll rebel. He'll be like,
right.
See, I was oversaturated.
A cunt shirt.
My parents didn't have any kind of ground rules, you know. They just let me watch what the fuck ever, and I just kind of gravitated to stuff like Dead Alive. So, but then again, they didn't think it was cool. So Jarvis's point stands. So,
yeah.
So when you were, when did you shift from just, you know, loving horror and being in metal bands as hobbies to maybe trying to pursue a career in the film industry?
It was pretty much straight after high school. I started, I was actually incredibly lucky because, you know, there wasn't, this is like, we're talking late 90s, there wasn't really much going on. I was in a small town and there was a job opening for a video editor assistant, like trainee at this TV station. So so it was like my very first job was like a video editor, and I did that for like 3 years, and I wasn't really mentally prepared for that job in terms of like my maturity level because I was just straight out of high school and still very much in that zone. But it was great. Like I still learned how to do a lot of things the wrong way. You know, this is like we're talking shooting on like VHS cameras and like a lot of like local sports games, but I was still like I drank so much one night before, like we were filming Speedway. I'm not sure if you guys like you guys have Speedway, like the, you know, just driving around the track, so I was filming Speedway on like this big platform in the morning, and I just got raucously drunk, and I was still drunk when I got to work, and I was just like on this platform just filming these cars go around and around, and I just vomited on the camera, and then I turned around off the like tower and just like vomited off the tower, like, you know, away from the crowd, and I looked down, there was this little kid down there like watching me. I'm like, oh man. Stay in school. But yeah, it was fun. Like it wasn't like a lot of money or anything, but you know, back then I didn't really need much, and I did like a lot of different weird stuff. My boss was completely insane. Like he'd have like there's a Christian show on, and then straight afterwards he'd bring strippers in to do an ad for the local strip club, and it was pretty fun.
Okay.
So I sort of like, I did that for a while, and then I ended up moving to Wellington, where I'm living now. I'm going to film school in the 2000s, and then I started making short films and, you know, just weird stuff. And I made this short film that was all shot on green screen, and I just sort of assumed that I'd try and find someone to do the visual effects, and then realized afterwards I had no money. So I taught myself visual effects, and that led to, you know, getting work doing visual effects, which I've been doing, you know, since then, off and on. So I still like work in visual effects, and then I get to do sort of like, you know, a film or a short film or a music video, and then I get broke and go back to visual effects.
So wait, you didn't go to school for visual effects? You just taught yourself?
No, I just like I taught myself. Just like don't even know. This is just when maybe YouTube was first coming in, but there was like a lot of video tutorials, like Creative Cow, which I think is still around. Had a lot
so
of
we're talking digital special effects, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it was initially it was in After Effects, and then I managed to get a job on a kids show, compositing these two like little CG aliens into a live action zoo, and so that was I sort of like had an interview, and I didn't know how to use this computer program, and I just lied and said I could, and just like did these tutorials in the weekend and started on Monday. So I just totally like bullshitted my way in, and somehow managed to keep my job. But
That's how you got to do it.
It was fun.
Yep.
It was like so it was like this total kids show, and it was quite funny. There was like just weird stuff, like I had to like remove the genitals from like zoo animals because like obviously you see these like monkeys running around on a kids show, you can't see their balls hanging down, so I had to like just like digitally erase like monkey testicles and all sorts of weird stuff. But it was really fun. And then I managed to like sort of progress onto bigger films. I did like my first feature was the Nicolas Cage movie, like Ghost Rider 2.
Pretty good start.
So like lots of fire and like skulls. It was amazing. And like I've did the Hobbit movies.
You're blowing my mind because I'm looking at your IMDb right now and I see all that you've done for visual effects, and you taught yourself. You've been on Lord of the Avengers.
Yeah, so like when you get that first gig, right? If it's Ghost Rider 2 or something like this, like are you working on a visual effects team that's run by somebody and they're like, hey, we need guys like to do the work, basically, to do this? And then that's cool. So yeah, I'm just curious about how that comes about, you know. And I think this is like really, there's like a hidden lesson here, especially for, I mean, I'm not even in the States right now, but I'm going to throw it back to the States where, like, you know, we've got a big issue right now with the college, like university system. I mean, it's extremely expensive and people are in debt for most of their lives after that. And, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, it's cool. Like, you're a good example of somebody who's like, you know, you come from a small town. There's really not a lot of prospects, but if you're passionate about something and, you know, you have the means, I mean, there's more means now, 25 years later than when you did it, you know, for people to educate themselves, whether that's, you know, for whatever they like. There's a ton of videos for everything out there. There's magazines, there's blogs, you know, and I think that like young people in the arts should really, especially should follow that path. And just like, you know, if or just really any profession, but like if you love something enough, the information is there. The best thing to do is just to actually start doing it, you know, and
exactly.
Like that's how you're going to learn. And then you meet people, and you know,
should have
90% of it is like, you know, your relationships and like being somebody that people like working with and being around, you know, and like and when you work with cool people, you can pick things up very quickly. And when you're in the moment, it's like you're in it, you're doing it, you know. So I think that's a really, really valuable underlying lesson here to that. So I hope that you know, people out there listening that are thinking that they can't do something because they don't have the money or the means, or parents thinking about, you know, them having to put their kids through all this university and stuff. I mean, it's like, you know, you're not guaranteed anything after that except debt. Debt is the only thing that is guaranteed, you know? So, you know, I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the university system that are highly educated and take it very seriously. And, you know, if you're going to be a doctor or, you know, sometimes you need that stuff, or trade schools and all that stuff. But, you know, regardless, I hate to go off on that tangent, but I'm just saying, like, it's good.
It's a good message.
It's good to see an example of it. You know, I mean, I'm a high school dropout, and, you know, now I run my own business and tour the world. But it took me, you know, I mean, I've been playing music for 25 years, but I mean, that's the thing. I think we all know who we are when we're pretty young. We just try and ignore that, you know, a lot of us. And it's just everybody needs to, especially with the way the world is now, everybody needs to just get on it, man. If you love doing something, just do it, you know. So
totally. Yeah, and I know a lot of people that went to university and just they were so young, they didn't really know what they wanted to do as well, and they like studied for 4 years, and now they do something completely different.
Right.
Like not even, there was a guy at film school who like did like 4 years of law school to be a lawyer, realized that he didn't want to be a lawyer, so he like went to film school, and just like you said, that's so much money. Like it's insane how much it costs. And I sort of wish I had have gone through that experience, just not in terms of like career oriented, but just like maybe learning about like mythology or history or there's definitely some aspects of it that I'm like, man, I would have enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time,
you know
like you said, that information's out there, man. Like we've got these phones that have got like all the world's like libraries and everything.
And the cool thing too is like especially if you work in any kind of special effects or editing, like stuff like that, like you got to know how valuable time is because shit just takes so long. And now it's cool because like if you want to study those subjects that you just talked about, you could probably find somebody now that's written a book or has a video or a video series that breaks it down into like modern day terms and says, okay,
it would be a class.
Here's what, here's
for free.
what that's, so it's great, man. You just gotta, the information, it's fucking insane.
The other thing is these days, like back when we were doing, like when I was at film school, like mini DV cameras were just like sort of had just come out. So, but like they look like shit. People don't, a lot of young people don't even remember what like, what was the resolution? It's like 720 by 576. It looks like a square and it's just grainy as shit. It looks terrible. And that's what we worked with. Now everyone's got like 4K, video on their phones. And
that's
it looks
crazy.
Amazing. If you had a really good idea, but like not much money, you could make a pretty kick-ass film on your phone. And just like if it had like, some good characters, a really good idea behind it, it doesn't really matter. No, no one really cares what it's shot on. It could, still get you places.
Right.
Yeah.
You miss every shot you don't take, ladies and gentlemen. Just take the damn shot.
Right. Exactly.
So I know you guys made Deathgasm. It was sort of like a filmmaking competition. So what kind of constraints were you guys working under? Was there budgets and time constraints due to the competition?
Yeah. It was, I was actually working, I think, on like the third Hobbit movie at that point, or like one of them. But I was like incredibly burnt out. I think a lot of people were like, there was no crunch time. We started the job on crunch time. Like it's like 80-hour weeks. Like some people working like 100-hour weeks. And that wasn't just at the end of the project. That was at the start of the project. And it just went on and on. And I was just watching Gandalf on a green screen every day was just sort of depressing me. And so, I got the opportunity to pitch this, like, I sort of had the title first, Deathgasm. I'm like, that's kind of a cool title. And then I found out there's like an indie metal label called Deathgasm Records. And so I was like, oh shit, but it's still like such a cool title. So I contacted the dude from Deathgasm Records and like he sort of gave me the okay to use the name. So we went from there and just like, at first I was just like, I just want to make something incredibly gory and like a sort of like a Toxic Avenger trauma movie, just gore and gore and gore. And like sort of maybe the story was a bit like maybe Splatterhouse, just like this dude that's just like,
Splatterhouse
getting revenge on creature. Yeah. So that was sort of like the story. And then I sort of revised it to be about metalheads. And then that's where like the current, that's where the characters came from. And sort of using a bit of my own history and like my own experiences living in small town New Zealand. And we were up against some other projects as well. There was like, but I think, we were like an early favorite of the judges, like who were like Ant Timpson, who's like a big horror. He's like a festival programmer and producer and now a director in New Zealand. Definitely pretty like a big sort of film figure here. And so he was the executive producer, and then we won the competition. It was like 150K American. I think about $150,000 and 20 days of shooting. So like for like the special effects and everything we were doing, it was pretty tight. But
okay, so wait, hang on, sorry. You won. So that's what I'm confused about. So the competition. So is that the prize money or is for winning the competition? So you shot the film and then submitted the film.
No. We submitted like
a short.
It went in increments. No. At first there was like a sort of a synopsis. Then it went to like a bigger treatment, and like you had to submit like a poster as well.
Okay,
it's kind of Yeah.
Okay, so before shooting so you win the competition and you get the budget to shoot.
Yeah,
got
that's
it.
Yeah,
okay.
totally.
And
the judges produced it. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And so you wrote the script.
Yeah. That was like the final, because like each like segment of the competition, like more you'd get shortlisted and shortlisted again,
right,
based on like how you did. So
that's
it's funny because the poster
Go ahead, sorry.
The poster that I like pitched was actually the poster they used for like the film with like I'm not sure if you've seen like the one with like the fingers are cut off on red and black.
Yeah, right.
That was what I pitched for the competition, and then they actually used it on some of the DVDs. I'm like, oh shit.
That's crazy. That's just crazy. Like I've not heard of, it's almost backwards in a way. I mean, it's a very cool concept. I mean, the script is usually the story, and the script is usually how you would start something, but that's really cool. I mean, because so basically you come up with the concept, a general concept, a name, a treatment, and then it kind of gets further than that, and then it finally gets greenlit in that way.
Which is sort of how it works in Hollywood sometimes as well. Like there are some films that get greenlit on like a like an elevator pitch, and then like
sure.
But
but like from the independent circuit, I would guess that would be more of a rare occurrence, like
definitely,
but so let me ask you this, hey, don't answer this if you don't want to, or whatever, if it's none of our business, but so when you do a competition like that and you get the funding on that, so you said that the organization or whoever produced the film, who owns the IP on that at the end of the day? I mean, because it's like,
that's sort of getting into why the sequel has been a bit of a nightmare to like make, because the original contract I signed meant that because I got paid like pretty much nothing from Deathgasm, but like I'm not bitter about that, because I got to make a film, and it was like I was never like about money, because I was making money doing visual effects, but I was like, oh man, life can't just be about money. I need to do something. I didn't need to do something that I used to read Fangoria still, a lot, and like I was reading about like Sam Raimi and Toby Hooper and all these crazy experiences they had. I'm like, oh man, I want to do shit like that. Like I want to go through that. And the original contract I signed, I owned the IP, but then like when it came to doing the sequel, for some reason there was another contract that I hadn't signed that it's incredibly complex. I've had lawyers look it over, and that the original the New Zealand Film Commission and the original producers and the distribution company Dark Sky had the rights. Long story short, we went through all this bullshit, and I have the IP now, so which is really cool. So we're sort of like putting it together with a really cool team, but yeah, it definitely is I was just like, when I originally signed those contracts, I just never gave a fuck. Like it was like I never went into it like, oh man, I'm gonna like like make this film and it's gonna be like this sort of I just wanted to do something. I didn't really care about like what I had to sign to do it. Right. Let's just do it. And I think like that must be a thing with bands as well, when they're like, especially when they're young, they're like,
even us, even with Night Demon. I mean, we're on a major label, and like I was like we're still there, but it's like one of the worst moves I made. Like when it happened, it was like. It was funny. That was in 2015, so probably around the same time your film got released. But yeah, I mean, hindsight. It just sometimes like it depends what you're trying to do, right? It's like if you're trying to make Deathgasm, if you're like, look, this is like my life's work. This is like my opus. And this is like, I just want to make a film in my life. It's a lot different than like, hey, you're a filmmaker. Like you got to break out somehow. And sometimes, or like I'm in a band. It's like, you know, in order for us, you know, to be the international touring act that we are, it's like sometimes like you got to play the game. You got to like, you have to just, so if you want to be in the conversation, like sometimes you have to compromise a little bit in the beginning and roll those dice and hope that you have some kind of,
you got to get started.
But you hope that the deal is the, you know, not everybody should be totally raped in their first deal, you know.
No, totally. And it's
you just never know what's going to happen with your stuff, though. That's the thing. You never know what's going to happen with your stuff. I mean, like one thing with us is like, I'm glad that, you know, we always kept our publishing, which is nice, but like master rights we'll never own. You know what I'm saying? So like but you know, the publishing of the work is good, like to own that IP. I mean, and that's an easy thing to give away. People are always trying to get that, you know, stuff like that. They're distribution companies with films too. I mean, they'll offer you in advance for ownership of, you know, and then you start splitting it up and then you have investors and like, it gets super complicated, you know, and at the end of the day, you're just like, hey, I just like, this was my idea, you know, but it's got to get made and it's got to be seen.
I've learned a little bit about that from like licensing music for films, and it is almost even crazier than the film industry. Because I remember I was emailing like John Tardy from Obituary about like having an Obituary song and Deathgasm, and he was down for it, but he was just like, look, dude, we just don't like, you know, I'm just not the guy to ask. Like, you know, I wrote the song and like, you know, I don't have those rights, you know, and it's incredibly like frustrating, I think, for a lot of like musicians and anyone in the creative industry. I guess you have to sort of sell your soul a little bit.
So here's I'll give just a 10-second education for the listening audience. So basically, if you're going to license any music for a film or television or commercial or anything like that, the way that it's split up is a 50-50 split. The record, or it's basically 50% is whoever owns the master rights, which is the actual recording of the music. And the other half is the publishing, which is the ownership of the actual work itself. Usually, I mean, in our situation, it's like we own the publishing and the label owns the master rights of the master recording. So if we can all agree on everything, the money will usually get split like that. Half the label, half us. But the thing is, most labels, especially with something in the case of Obituary or, you know, a band that did a deal in the early 90s or something like that. A lot of times they sold their publishing to the record company, and then the record company doesn't exist anymore. They're owned by a major label, and they sold their publishing too. So like they really have no rights to their stuff then. You know, it's like the bands are cool. The bands want to do it. But sometimes the label, there's no focus anymore on this stuff. Is that it's not that they don't want to do it. It's like they're willing to walk money because they don't even have the staff to pay attention to it, you know? So it's a whole twisted thing out there. And I hope moving forward with, like, say if we talk about blockchain and digital things like this, where everything's digital, we get to a point where things can be monetized digitally just through coding and back end stuff, where you can embed stuff where, hey, the money, every time something gets monetized, the money gets split in its ways. And people, since it's a free market anyway, you know, see, the major label's not going to crack down on the bootlegger on YouTube, but they won't they won't take the time to give something away to somebody trying to create something that wants to pay them. It's a terrible, terrible world we're living in. So anyway, sorry. I know this interview is about you. This isn't about the back.
Oh no! It's a fascinating. I find it really fascinating, and you know, like we so for the music soundtrack for Deathgasm, we had no money, so it was just all me, just like hitting out musicians online and just begging and losing my dignity and getting told to fuck off by a lot of people, quite rightfully. And yeah, we managed to put together a really cool soundtrack. You know, a lot of like independent bands. We had like a couple of tracks from Emperor, which one of my all-time favorite black metal. I've still got like my, have I still got it? Oh yeah, still got my In the Night Side Eclipse cassette tape. This is the same tape from when I was like from when I was a kid, and I played that so much. And yeah, I think that was like Candlelight Records, so they were just incredibly cool. And there's some bands like I wanted an Enslaved song for that scene where they're getting whipped in the face of the dildos, and I was on the phone to like Norway, and just they basically just told me to piss off. And yeah, so it was very, very hard, but we managed to put together a cool soundtrack. There was like that was like the hardest thing, I think, just trying to navigate that. And you know, hopefully.
Well, let's hook up on the next one, man, if I can help out.
Totally, bro.
I was gonna ask,
no,
since you own the IP now, is there going to be a sequel?
I hope so. Like, so the thing that, and it's kind of a crazy parallel of Evil Dead. Like the thing that helped us out on the first Deathgasm, the reason why we could do it for so cheap is because, you know, the Evil Dead remake, I think like 2013.
Yeah.
That shot in New Zealand, so we managed to steal heaps of like gore rigs and like makeup and fake blood from that film and use it on our film. So like that scene where like she's chainsawing that thing in half and like there's like raining blood, and I love that movie, by the way. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a great remake.
That same dummy is like a dummy that gets axed in the head by the Medina in one of the scenes, and just like, you know, just repainted and everything. So yeah, they're currently like shooting like Evil Dead Rises here, so we're hoping to like maybe after that there's a lot of heads of department and like the makeup artists that I hopefully can you know, steal off the back of that film, and yeah, we can hopefully make Deathgasm 2. But we almost we almost put it together last year, but it just didn't get through one of the final hurdles, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, I'm currently like revising the script, and
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think the sequel script is a lot of fun. Like it's sort of set, you know, 6-7 years later with the main character sort of like you know, at first he's like a teenage metalhead. Now he's like sort of a washed up metalhead in his like mid-20s, and yeah, so but there's a lot of fun, you know, that we're having with that. There's a lot of scenes that are even more sort of over the top and insane. That yeah, there's especially one scene that every time someone reads the script, I'm like, I can't believe that scene's in there. What the hell are you thinking? I'm like, well, I'm so desensitized that I just can't see that it's like incredibly offensive. But like, I don't know, but the producers, I'm working with some really cool producers. They're like, no, that scene stays in the movie.
Great.
Because they know it'll be like a GIF, or like it'll be on YouTube. Everyone will share it around because it's so like batshit insane. They're like, so it's cool working with people that realize that and are passionate about like maintaining the integrity and not trying to like water it down.
Right. So your first feature is Deathgasm. You work kind of backwards. You got a bare bones budget, but your second feature, you got Harry fucking Potter. So what's how'd that jump happen?
That was, it's kind of crazy because I sort of had started writing Guns Akimbo first, but before Deathgasm as a short film, and then I mean when I made Deathgasm, there was no like, I wasn't thinking about like any international audiences or festivals or any of that stuff. I was like, let's just make a weird film that I can just like smoke pot in my garage and watch with my friends and just have a laugh. Like there was never any expectation that anyone else was going to dig it. And then it definitely, yeah, got into all these festivals. We premiered at South by Southwest, and you know, it's kind of crazy. Like I think it's done a lot better overseas than it has in New Zealand. Like a lot of people in New Zealand like don't even know about it, but like, you know, there's the cool thing is like I never really realized this until I'd made Deathgasm, is like people in the States would come up to me and they'd be like, oh man, we love like fucking gory New Zealand films, New Zealand horror comedy. And I didn't even realize we had that reputation. But, you know, when you look at it, there is like a, you know, a bit of a lineage of like, you know, the Peter Jackson films and like, you know, Taika's, the What We Do in the Shadows. And so it's cool being sort of a part of that. And, you know, I you know, went to all these festivals. I basically, like, I was working on Wolverine, I think, and I after that in Australia, and I basically just lived out of a suitcase for a few months and went over to Europe, you know, London, you know, the States, Mexico, Korea. I'd never even been to the Northern Hemisphere before making Deathgasm, and then suddenly I went around the world. Like I tried to work it out like 3 times. It's insane, and you know, it was just great. I just loved meeting like going to festivals and meeting all the fans. And it was like, you know, when I was growing up, it was just like me and a few friends, just like we were never part of like this big, you know, it was very, very small. And then going to like these festivals where there's just hundreds of horror fans, and right. You know, like going to Mexico and everyone's like wearing like metal shirts and everyone's cheering. It was fantastic. I had a great time. So during that, I went to LA and I met these producers and I pitched. They're like, "Oh, what else you got?" And I'm like, I had no ideas. I was pretty much just drinking at festivals the entire time. I had no, you know, I couldn't find time to like sit down and try and like think of another thing to do. So I just pitched Guns Akimbo out of the blue. And they dug it, and like, they asked me if you got a script, and I'm like, yeah, I'll sort of polish it, I'll send it through in a few weeks. And I'm like, fuck. So like I basically just like wrote it like in a few weeks, just like just smashing the keyboard, and yeah, that's pretty much how it was born. And there was, you know, we started putting it together and started putting some names down for like the lead. And I think Daniel Radcliffe was definitely like on the top of that list. You know, I sort of think of him as he's this generation's like Michael J. Fox.
Yeah,
he's like
that's a good one. That's a good
everyman, sort of like, you know, just likable sort of everyman, and really sort of easy to see in a role like that. And he was literally the first actor we sent the script to, and then suddenly it was like, oh, he wants to get on Skype and chat. Oh, wow. Holy shit. Like I expected like, you know, months of rejection, and definitely had that later. We were casting a few other roles. We went out to like 40 different people for like the antagonist. Went out to like Patrick Stewart and like all these people.
Oh shit.
It was a lot harder to cast that role. But yeah, like got on Skype with Dan, and he's just a genuinely awesome guy, fantastic, really modest, you know, just really loves making films, loves meeting people. Like he knew the names of everyone on the film set, like all the assistants. There was like no ego or like I'm like the man because I did these movies. He was just like just an ultra awesome guy. And a great actor as well. Like, you know, we were incredibly tight for time, and it was just like, damn, we're just gonna get one take of this because we have to go like fucking shoot like 20 other scenes tonight. Could you lay down in this like in this junkyard in the rain, and there might be glass on the ground, we're not sure, and just like have this like big dude, like we're just gonna spurt blood into your eyes. And he's like, yep. You know, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, freezing cold, you know. He's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, just he was down for it. And I love working with actors with that attitude, you know, because there's just so, especially when you're making genre films, it's arduous, man. It's filthy. You know. Yeah,
I loved him in The Woman in Black, so he's got some familiarity in the genre, you know. I like those.
He's great. Like he's done some cool shit. I loved him in that. sort of an underrated film, actually. I need to rewatch it. Swiss Army Man, where he played like the farting corpse, was hilarious. Like, and I really liked Horns as well, like, which was based on like a book by I read by Stephen King's son. Is it Joe Hill?
Yeah, Joe Hill.
Yeah, I love the book. Like, I thought the movie was like really cool. He was great in it. Like, I think it's one of those things where you read the book first. You're not, you're always sort of expecting a little bit more from it, maybe. But I thought it was a really cool movie. Actually, like related to metal, I think his Heart-Shaped Box, like his first book, is like about a metalhead who like buys this. I think he buys like this a ghost off eBay or this haunted object, and it actually is haunted. It's but he's like this washed up sort of maybe sort of a combination of Marilyn Manson and Ozzy, a little bit like sort of.
You're talking about Joe Hill's book?
Yeah, Heart-Shaped Box. So it's like really, really cool book. Actually, I'd love to see that as a film. I think metalheads are amazing characters to play with. You know, there's
they are,
especially like a lot of movies. Like I just saw It, and there's so many movies where it's just like they chuck a fucking generic metal T-shirt on one of the bullies, and like you're the bully.
Of course,
beat up these characters, right? Like. And that's so bullshit. Like when I was growing up, none of us were bullies. We were like we were the bullied, like it was the people in the rugby teams that would beat the shit out of us. We were just like a bunch of skinny nerds. Just like, so it's so weird how there's that Hollywood thing of metalheads being bullied. So I always love the opportunity to show like a metalhead in a different light.
And if you're on the outside looking into the metal scene in general, you don't realize just how varied metal is. Like you listen to death metal and you listen to power metal, that they're not very close. So someone who's a fan of death metal and power metal, maybe they like metal, but that's not they may not be similar at all,
No, totally. It's I've gone through a bit of a death metal resurgence lately. Just I suddenly just started getting into it a lot more. And is into a lot of like sort of like metalcore and progressive metal. I've never left metal, but my tastes have changed. But I've started getting into a lot of like more sort of like Black and Death and that sort of stuff. But yeah, like then there's like the symphonic metal, like the real European stuff, which is just totally different. It's like a whole different thing.
Exactly. Like you wouldn't even know that it's considered the same quote unquote genre. It's just metal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, totally.
Just to back up a little bit on something you said, we just talked to Tim Baum a couple days ago. He plays Lionel in Dead Alive.
Fantastic. Oh man, I love him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was echoing pretty much the same things you just said about the New Zealand horror, because the first time he came over here to a horror convention, it just blew his mind because America is a bit different with horror. We have horror conventions in every major city with thousands of people there, and that just kind of took him off guard. I just thought that was funny.
It's so weird. Like we have, there's definitely a scene here, but like I wasn't prepared for just like, people with like tattoos of like, Reanimator, and it's just amazing. Like I love it. I really, definitely felt like I felt, I found my tribe, in a way. It's really cool. And, definitely a lot different from when we were younger, and like there wasn't, I think even maybe in the States and a lot of smaller places, there wasn't like the internet, so people just contacting each other with zines and like Fangoria, and same with metal, whereas now people are a lot more connected, for better or worse.
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to ask you, to date, what is the best piece of advice you've received for navigating the business?
Man, I don't know if people gave me enough advice. Actually, like, it's I don't know. It's I guess like find what you love doing, and hey, we lost you.
Yeah, there's a big storm here, but anyway.
Oh shit!
I'll keep going. Sorry.
I guess I'm not sure if someone told me this or I read it, but find do what you love and then find a way to make money from it. Because a lot of people do the other way around, and it just can sort of lead to not being happy with where you are, I guess, and I think there's an incredible amount of luck with that. But if you find your passion, doing something that you really love, and then try and find a way to make money off it second. I don't know, like that's something that I sort of has worked for me at least.
Right. I mean, that's a good idea. Jarvis, I'm about to be cutting Jason loose soon. If you got anything else for him.
Well, I just came in at the end of that, but yeah, no, I mean, I can agree with that. I mean, I just heard the last two sentences, but I mean, it's so true. I mean, you have to focus, and if you absolutely love something, you will find a way to monetize it. And, the more you work at something, the better you're going to be at it. That's how you can become a professional. I think talent is extremely overrated. It's like,
oh man,
I mean, hard work and being a nice person, like, will get you much farther. And like, people shouldn't be so afraid to suck at something when they first try it. You got to try something. Like, Michael Jordan sucked at basketball when he first started playing, I mean, that's just the way it is. And, you can't, money is good. Money gives us choices, money. It's good to have currency to be able to do the things you want to do. But I mean, the gratification you get in life is when you work through something. So, if you have to put yourself in a tough position sometimes, I mean, I did it when I was like when I turned 30, I was like, oh shit, I fucked around for too long. Now I have to suck it up for a good 5-6 years. And I had to do it. And that's fine, but like, you got to humble yourself sometimes, and you can't take it with you. I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer, like,
right.
It's just, you want to leave a legacy behind. You could do that with your work, you really can.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's, look, it's crazy because Kurt Cobain, I was just sort of reading about, I was a massive Nirvana fan when I was a kid, but, he always had that image of just like this sort of slacker who just like didn't give a fuck. Like, but when you actually go into it, he was incredibly dedicated. He was like drawing logos and like storyboarding music videos and like writing lyrics like all the time. He was like a really dedicated hard worker, and it was it's
really cool. Like he released I was never. Oh, by the way, good shout at the end. It is in Deathgasm. There is a at the after the credits. That's that little bit you have after the credits where he's talking to the vinyl. It's like mentioned that Kurt Cobain was in heaven or wherever he was, the afterlife. But yeah, Kurt Cobain, like, they released like years ago, they like his journal. They just made a book out of it. It's great. You see all the stuff. It's like, we all have that. That's all of us. Like in school, like, man, I've got shit. I look back 25 years ago and I'm like, holy shit. Like, I'm drawing guitars and stuff.
Same.
But, and then like Night Demon recorded with Steve Albini last year, and he did In Utero. And like, he was telling us all kinds of stuff. Like, and he was like, that guy was like, he was really serious about his music, even though it didn't, he really was serious about what he did, and that's all that mattered, and that was fine.
I was actually just reading about Steve Albini, I think last night actually, and what was it like working with him? He sounds like a character. I like his.
Dude, we did the song. It's called "Are You Out There?" You should check it out on YouTube. Just Night Demon, "Are You Out There?" Because we did a little like mini doc of us in the studio with him, because we just did one song. But we did it at his place, Electric Audio in Chicago. But it's like, he's just going to work, man. Like, I remember I asked him at only one time in the process, I asked him his opinion on something. I was like, all right, so like this part, like, and it was a simple thing too. It was like this note or that note. It's not like we could go here or we can go there. I'm like, well, what do you think? Like this or that? And he was just like, it's your song, man. like I'm just like here to, and I remember too, there was one thing that, like, I really wanted our guitar player to set up for like this different sound. And I could tell like Albini got just a little like fuck, I'm gonna have to kind of like move a bunch of shit, you know? And I was like, look, man, it's worth, like, we need that sound. Like, it's worth it. Like, this is, you know, so we're gonna do it, you know? And he's like, so I was like, dude, I'll help you. Like, like rearrange all these Marshall amps and shit. And he's like, no, I'm gonna do it.
Don't
and you know, he wears, dude, like he wears like his like full on like it's like a jumpsuit. Like he's like a car mechanic, but he's just going to work. He's going to work, and like it was a great experience, man. But the one time I did ask him just one small thing, he just like he just wouldn't give his opinion on it. Like he's like, that's your music, you know, and it's like. Yeah, but you know, like why we're here, right? Like at some point, and I know that you're just an engineer, but at some point in your 40-year history of doing this, you had to have, and being in bands like Shellac and just being a musician, like you got to know that like we're here because you got to have some kind of like expert musical opinion or some flavor that we want. You know, so
just a tad bit of insight.
It's pretty interesting because some producers are like, because some producers are the opposite, right? Like they pretty much like they play instruments on the albums and like they are pretty much like a band member. As I actually saw this documentary about Def Leppard and like their producer pretty much made them. Like if they didn't have that producer, they would have sounded like a totally different band.
Well, Albini refuses to call himself a producer. He refuses.
That's right.
He won't use that word. He's an engineer. So you know, hey, that's cool, man. You know, it'd be cool to have Rick Rubin laying on the couch producing and Albini at the controls. You know, so. But it was all analog, man. It was all to tape, and like I love doing recordings to tape, and like it was just great. You know, it was really cool. Actually, one last thing about that. One last thing. I remember we record live, right? And I said, hey, I want to punch in a couple things on the bass track. And he's like, why? It sounded fine to me. And I'm like, nah, like I could tell because I played it. Like what was, you know, the parts that were kind of like, that just didn't feel right. And he's like, let's listen back. And we listened back to the solo track. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. Like I couldn't even hear in the spots where I thought it was bad. So, you know, hey, there we go. I did get some of his professional magic in there.
What was the name of that song?
It's called "Are You Out There?" It's kind of like a tribute to Thin Lizzy that we did to Phil Lynott, you know. Anyway,
check it out.
That's not. It ain't about me. It ain't about me. So,
no, fantastic.
Well, Jason, before we let you go, why don't you tell everybody what you have on the horizon and where folks can find you? Do you have a website, social media, all that stuff?
I'm sort of like, that's actually another piece of advice I'd probably give, you know, any sort of like filmmaker or, you know, social media now while we still can, because it's fucking shit. Like it is so terrible. And I'm sort of like, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, but it's like my accounts are very like, I don't really go on them. I sometimes like the only thing I really do is on Instagram. I get a lot of fan art. People send me fan art, so I share that because I'm like, and tattoos. Like if someone got a fucking tattoo of like based on one of my movies, I'm gonna share that shit because that's awesome. And that's sort of what I do it for. And like the thing that sort of keeps me going is like I get messages from people who've seen like you know, especially Deathgasm. They're like, man, I'm so depressed and I saw your movie and it cheered me up. And I'm like, fuck, that's so cool. Like I don't, you know, that's sort of way. And I Jarvis, you must get this with music as well. Like that's the coolest thing to hear. And I just but yeah, social media is just it's fucked. And like there's, especially Twitter is like, it's the whole culture at the moment is just, you know, it's strange. In the 90s there was like this thing where we knew we were outsiders. Like I'd run around like get drunk with my mates and like put a dress on and like, you know, do crazy shit. We loved like not conforming and we love pissing people off. Like, and nowadays the culture's, you don't want to go pissing people off because they will fucking kill you. They'll make you lose your job. They will like, yeah, like it's very different now. Like the whole
watch what you say
idea of
people
transgressive culture. Yeah,
people will
transgressive. It's really uncool to be transgressive these days.
This will
it's
live
really
forever.
Uncool.
This will live forever. What you say right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah. It's a weird culture.
Yeah.
And I think it will change. Yeah. Like my kid's generation, I think, is gonna he's gonna grow up in this generation almost like where you can't say anything. And I think his generation are gonna. It might be like the the punks again. They'll just say, no, fuck this. We're gonna say what we want. We're going to do what we want, And I think it will change. But right now it's like your permanent record.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, you can't even have a discussion with anybody politically or anything because everything is met with satire now. Everything. Yeah. Like you can't, it's like people don't really talk to each other like that to their face. No. But now it's like, everybody's forced to stay home and not talk and socially distance, not physically distance, but socially distance. So they are in a position where that's it. Everything, every comment section you read, it's immediately approached. Everything is approached with a backhanded compliment or satire. And that's just not, you're never going to be able to have an open conversation with anybody about that, Right. So I hope that
very divisive.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope you're right about the next generation, like people that I've always said that I want to be the kind of person, I want to just have the type of character where I'm always open to be proven wrong. I never want to know that I think that I just know everything,
No, exactly. No, it's very, very, and that's why I love horror and metal, and I hope it sort of stays this way. It's sort of a few of the remaining art forms that you can express yourself in a way that is divisive and sometimes offensive and abrasive, and people will listen still. And I hope that remains the same. I think. I listen to crazy shit. I listen to like gore grind sometimes, and I don't know. It's great still being able to have that freedom, and it's I definitely hope that remains the same. I don't know, but I do miss growing up in the 90s when it was no one asked what political party do you like? It's no, I fucking hate politicians, man. What the fuck?
Yeah. What do you mean?
I'm into these guys. Yeah, it's just politicians are fucking awful. Everyone thought that. Everyone in my generation was no, fuck that. And now it's you have to be on someone's team. I'm no, I don't.
Nope.
Nobody. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. What is coming up? I think Justin. That's what Justin was. Oh really
sorry. So we went off on a tangent. I'm working on a lot of stuff. Who knows what will happen? But I've got a Deathgasm 2 is definitely something we're working towards. Working on this crazy slasher with these American producers as well, which I've just finished the script for over the holidays, Christmas holidays here, which is a very fun take on the classic slasher tropes, I think. So
can you tell us the name?
I don't think so, because it'll sort of give away the producers are very sort of conscious of the concept. Gotcha. But it's sort of a very, very and I think especially it's sort of interesting writing an American movie coming from New Zealand, but it's definitely there's a lot of commentary over what's happened in the States recently over the last few years, for good and bad, and
there's a lot to comment on.
Did you write?
There's a lot to comment on, which has been really fun, and I think we do it in a because I love America. It's I think it's a great country. The great thing about America is and especially setting a film in America, is that it's like a blank canvas, because no one, if you set a film in New Zealand or Zimbabwe or anywhere else, it's it's a Zimbabwean film or it's a New Zealand film.
Yep.
But if it's an American film, everyone knows the cultural, those all the references and everything. Everyone was brought up in American films, and I think it's almost like a blank slate. So, oh yeah, here we go.
Right.
Just make sure to bring your
off and running.
Make sure to bring your mid-Atlantic accents.
Exactly. Yeah. Which I'm not sure if you guys saw Guns Akimbo, but it was probably a mixed bag. Yeah. But I think people are hopefully pretty forgiving about stuff like that. I'm not sure how you guys feel about it, being from the States, but it's I grew up on like American movies, American music, so it's I
mean, we're just born there, and that's just the way it is. That's the cards we're dealt.
Yeah.
Look, I'm in Ireland right now, and I travel all over the world most of the time, right? When there's no pandemic, but I've just kind of realized that it's like, I think people just understand the way that I talk because I grew up in Los Angeles. That's where movies were made, and that's where people see movies. That's just the way it is. There's many things that Americans can learn from other cultures.
There's a lot,
but we're a mixed bag. It's like people don't understand that either. We're a huge country, and we're often judged by most country. We're often judged by our politics, which is unfortunate because I really don't even know anybody who's in. I know a lot of people. I really don't even know anybody who's into that shit.
Me neither.
Which is fantastic.
Internet.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
you're right.
all...
Like it is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just about to say, like, you're right. It's not even like one country. It's like 50 different countries. Like, because I've only been to LA, California, and Texas.
Right.
So I've been to California and Texas, and it's so different. And but I've only been to Austin, Texas, which I've heard is very different from like the rest of Texas.
It's very progressive.
Weirdo. Yeah, very very sort of weird liberal part of Texas, and but but all those American stereotypes, like everyone was so polite, like the most polite people ever. It was like I couldn't believe it. Everyone was so lovely, and like people say that about New Zealanders, but when I walk around here, it's like it's very. I had a great time. I don't know. It's I almost died once in LA. No, I didn't.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad going. No, it's great. But it's just amazing talking to you guys. Thank you so
Jason,
much for having me on.
We do not want to make you late for your dentist appointment. Before you go, I do have a death metal recommendation for you. Check out Hell Ripper, The Affair of Poisons. I think you'll like that.
Oh, yeah,
fantastic. Thank you.
Hell Ripper's great. They're a 2-piece band, and actually they were going to support Midnight in Europe on this last tour, but that didn't happen. So anyway, quick love for those guys. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Check that out. Yeah. All right. You have a good day. We don't want to make you late for your appointment. And it's been great talking to you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jason.
I'll pass along you guys' email so you can work on that second album.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We've got to keep chatting, Jarvis. Like, definitely. Like, I love to have you on, man. It's
it's funny. I've seen some photos on your bio. I just did a quick thing before this on IMDb, and like, there's a lot of my friends who are in photographs with you. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool,
awesome.
dude.
All right,
guys.
All right, guys.